talk with associations, bars Negro members. Do you feel that a group attached to the White House should follow such a policy?
No, I don't. I hope they'll let everyone in. Everyone in comes into the White House.
This has just been confirmed. Wild parties are thrown by U.S. presidents behind the closed doors of the White House. John F. Kennedy, surrounded by Hollywood's brightest stars, or even the stern Richard Nixon, surprisingly letting loose. What startling revelations might we uncover from these hidden celebrations packed with glamour and unexpected guests? Tune in as we investigate the scandalous escapades that unfold at these exclusive presidential parties. The hidden luxuries behind presidential doors. Inside the White House, there's a world of power, luxury, and privacy. But what really happens when no one's watching? While public appearances show one side of the president's life, their private moments often reveal a different story. Take John F. Kennedy, for example, whose famous parties were filled with Hollywood stars, or Franklin D. Roosevelt, who enjoyed quiet escapes to warm springs. Even Richard Nixon, usually seen as serious, held gatherings that might surprise you. And then there's Donald Trump, whose lavish events at Mar-a-Lago raised the bar for luxury. As the camera zooms out, an unknown figure slips through the velvet curtains, a sealed envelope clutched in their hand. Barack Obama, too, found his own ways to unwind away from the public eye. In this look at the social lives of U.S. presidents, we'll see how personal enjoyment often took center stage, far from the pressures of politics. Starting with John F. Kennedy, who was known for his charm and ability to bring life to any room, his parties have become legendary. These events, whether at the White House or the Kennedy family's place in Hyannisport, were more than just parties. They were a mix of celebrity glitz, political networking, and sometimes a bit of scandal. Picture walking into the East Room of the White House during one of Kennedy's famous gatherings. The smell of expensive cigars is in the air, champagne glasses are clinking, and the sound of laughter echoes from some of the country's most important people. The guest list was a who's who of the era, featuring stars like Frank Sinatra and Marilyn Monroe mingling with top politicians. It was as if Hollywood had come to Washington, D.C. for the night. One of the most talked about moments came during JFK's birthday in 1962. The public event at Madison Square Garden is well known, especially for Marilyn Monroe's unforgettable performance. But it was the private after-party that really stirred up interest. Rumors about a private encounter between Monroe and Kennedy added to the mystery and speculation that still surrounds that night. But this wasn't the only place Kennedy hosted his legendary parties. The Kennedy compound in Hyannisport was another hotspot for exclusive gatherings. Imagine the large lawns with breathtaking views of the ocean and a small group of powerful people sipping on fine wine. It was a laid-back setting, but don't be fooled. Underneath the relaxed atmosphere were subtle moves of political strategy. Among the guests were not just celebrities, but also influential figures like Ben Bradley, who would go on to become the Washington Post's executive editor. His close friendship with Kennedy gave him rare insights into the presidency. Still, there was always more happening behind the scenes. Whispers about Kennedy's rumored relationships made these parties even more intriguing. Stories about his connections with women like Marilyn Monroe and Judith Campbell Exner, who was also linked to mobster Sam Giancana, fueled plenty of gossip. While the full truth may never come out, these rumors add a layer of complexity to Kennedy's legacy, showing how power, fame, and secrecy often mixed at these high-profile events. There was always more happening beneath the surface at these gatherings that added to the intrigue. The late-night parties at the White House swimming pool, originally built for Franklin D. Roosevelt's health, became famous during JFK's time. These gatherings were anything but ordinary. JFK, his close friends, and many young women often surrounded the pool, which became the center of lively and wild celebrations. In his book, The Dark Side of Camelot, Seymour Hersh hints that these parties were pretty extreme. If that pool could talk, the stories would be unbelievable. The Secret Service, responsible for protecting the president, found themselves in tricky situations. Larry Newman, one of Kennedy's agents, remembered how women who hadn't gone through the usual security checks were allowed in, just because JFK's aide, Dave Powers, gave the nod. The agents often joked among themselves, wondering what they would do if one of these women turned out to be a threat. It was a high-energy and risky time in the White House during Kennedy's presidency. From one White House tradition to another, the story deepens. Exposing the Kennedy mystique. Alcohol was a regular part of these parties, a tradition that Jackie Kennedy herself started. She made sure the bar was always stocked for White House events. The public was shocked by this and sent in angry letters, but the criticism didn't slow the parties down. Instead, the champagne kept flowing, and the wild stories only increased. But alcohol wasn't the only thing being whispered about. Brian Abrams, in his book, Party Like a President, mentioned that there were times when interns were offered amyl nitrite and marijuana occasionally showed up. While there's no clear evidence that JFK used these drugs, the rumors add yet another layer to the already outrageous stories about his private parties. But this wasn't the whole story. Jackie Kennedy's dinner parties were very different. They were classy, filled with charm and sophistication. There was a quiet, exciting energy in the air, breaking away from the usual formal Washington dinners. After dinner, Jackie often encouraged guests to stay for coffee, and casual conversations sometimes turned into flirtatious chats. The soft candlelight blurred the line between the formal setting and personal connections, creating a dreamy, intimate atmosphere. Jackie had a playful side too. At one birthday party, she had the chief usher dress up and act like the house mother from her old school, Miss Porter's, adding a fun twist to the evening. But even with all the fun and sophistication, these moments were just a small part of what defined the Kennedy era. Each story from those years adds another layer to the legacy of Camelot, showing us how public figures live lives woven with both public duties and private moments. And yet, this was not the most surprising part of their lives. The place we're talking about isn't just a spot in history, it's a hidden treasure tucked away in the peaceful hills of Georgia. This is Warm Springs, a charming place full of friendship with just a touch of drama. Here, the 32nd President of the United States found a quiet getaway from the pressures of his job. It wasn't just the warm, healing waters that kept bringing Roosevelt back. It was also the freedom and close connections he found in this peaceful place. Roosevelt's relationship with Warm Springs began in 1924 when he first visited to seek relief from his polio symptoms in the mineral-rich waters. But more than just physical healing, this place gave him a rare opportunity to forget about being president for a while and just be himself, Frank. Over time, this health retreat turned into his personal haven where he could relax, surrounded by nature and people who truly understood him. The gatherings here were well known, but not in the way you might think. They weren't about big, formal dinners or heated political debates. Instead, they were small, casual get-togethers full of laughter. Picture Roosevelt playing cards, Eleanor Roosevelt telling stories by the fire, and Harry Hopkins diving into deep conversations. These were the joyful moments that lifted Roosevelt's spirits and helped him go back to his duties feeling renewed. What made these moments special was how different they were from Roosevelt's life in Washington. There, he was seen as a tough leader, steering the country through challenges like the Great Depression and World War II. But in Warm Springs, he was just Frank, someone who loved bird watching, enjoyed a good laugh, and cherished time with friends and family. Now imagine a president carrying the weight of the world, setting aside his formal role to enjoy simple things like swimming in the spring or having laid-back conversations. Warm Springs gave Roosevelt a chance to feel human again, away from the constant demands of his job. But this wasn't just about relaxation. Even though it was a retreat, Warm Springs was also a place for Roosevelt to have honest and straightforward talks about the important issues facing the nation without the usual formalities of Washington. Leaving Warm Springs, we uncover more about Roosevelt's private moments, where politics and leisure blend. In such a relaxed setting, it's easy to think that some of Roosevelt's boldest ideas may have been born here. The retreat, far from the public eye, allowed for open discussions without any pressure. Plus, the diverse mix of guests, from Hollywood stars to intellectuals and foreign leaders, created a space where culture, politics, and diplomacy blended together. Warm Springs wasn't just a place to unwind, it was where powerful ideas and lively discussions sparked in an exciting and sometimes unexpected way. Picture a Hollywood actress, her dress slipping off one shoulder, sipping tea and flirting with a foreign official. Their conversation is filled with hidden meanings and playful jokes, all happening under the watchful eye of President Roosevelt. These moments at Warm Springs were fascinating, made even more interesting because of the secrecy surrounding them. Roosevelt's children, especially his daughter Anna, played key roles at Warm Springs. Anna wasn't just his daughter, she was also his closest confidant, always by his side, offering emotional support. She was even with him during important events like the Yalta Conference in 1945. Her presence showed how much family meant to Roosevelt during the hard times. But life at Warm Springs wasn't always peaceful. Even though it seemed calm, there were moments of excitement and even conflict. Critics often accused Roosevelt of neglecting his presidential duties while spending time there. However, those who knew him understood that these trips were essential for his health. It's interesting that the very place where people thought he was ignoring his responsibilities was where he gathered the strength to lead the country. There's more. Warm Springs wasn't just a quiet retreat. It was a hub for private conversations and secret deals, hidden from the press and political enemies. This only added to its mysterious charm, making it much more than a simple vacation spot. Roosevelt's gatherings were personal, formal, and private, very different from the more public and flashy parties thrown by JFK. Nixon, for example, had his own secretive getaway at Key Biscayne. In 1969, he bought a waterfront home there, which became his retreat during his time as president. What made this place so interesting wasn't just the luxury, it was its proximity to the home of Charles Bebe Rebozo, Nixon's close friend. Rebozo's house became the center of many secret meetings, adding a whole new layer of intrigue to Nixon's private gatherings. Rebozo wasn't just a friend either. As the president of a local bank, he played a significant role in Nixon's secret operations, deepening the mystery surrounding the meetings held there. Step into the murky world of politics and power, where every secret meeting seems to lead to more mystery. Rab Bozo was handed a tricky job to clean up a suspicious donation of $100,000 from Howard Hughes to Nixon's presidential campaign. But as Bozo tried to do this, he found himself caught in a web tied to criminal networks. Just imagine the kind of conversations that might have happened in these meetings. Were they light and casual, or were they tense and filled with serious, complex talks? At Nixon's Key Biscayne retreat, there were some shocking moments, like the presence of people connected to the mafia. One surprising report came from Don Fulham, who said Nixon and Bozo bought property at incredibly low prices from Donald Byrd, a man with mafia ties through his business deals with Bozo. It's hard to believe, a U.S. president doing deals with people connected to organized crime, all in the privacy of his personal getaway. Next, we move from Roosevelt's casual escapes to Nixon's hidden retreats. Secrecy and scandal in presidential politics. The Secret Service eventually warned Nixon to cut ties with Byrd because of his criminal connections, but by that time, Nixon was already too involved. And his dealings with shady characters didn't stop there. He kept connections with others, including Arthur Deeser, a well-known financier with links to Jimmy Hoffa and mobster Meyer Lansky. These ties made people wonder just how deep Nixon was involved with organized crime and what influence these figures might have had on him. Public curiosity grew, and Nixon's reputation became even more controversial. But the questionable dealings weren't the only thing that stirred up drama at Key Biscayne. This spot also hosted important meetings with global leaders like German Chancellor Willy Brandt. These gatherings were full of sensitive political talks that could shape international relations, and because they were held in such secrecy, people couldn't help but speculate about what deals were being made away from the public eye. But this wasn't the worst part. As the Watergate scandal unfolded, Nixon tried to escape the chaos of Washington by retreating to Key Biscayne. In a strange twist, the Department of Defense spent $400,000 on a helicopter landing pad near Nixon's property. When Nixon later sold the land, including the pad, questions popped up about whether he had made a profit at the expense of taxpayers, adding more fuel to the fire of controversy surrounding this infamous place. Even after Nixon's presidency, the stories about his gatherings didn't fade away. In fact, they became part of pop culture. The 1983 movie Scarface, starring Al Pacino, was filmed at the same location where Nixon once held his secret meetings. Though the building was torn down in July 2004 by Edgardo Diuna, the tales from that time continue to echo today. These gatherings weren't just about political strategies. They were also about power, influence, and doing business away from the prying eyes of the media. These events allowed for open and frank conversations that might never have happened in the public spotlight. Along with the serious discussions, there was plenty of indulgence too. Lavish dinners that mixed fine food with the excitement of potential deals and alliances being quietly formed behind closed doors. Presidential retreats were far from ordinary. They became known for being secretive and full of curiosity, raising questions about what really happened behind closed doors. Bill Clinton didn't like Camp David at first. He found it too quiet and isolated. For the first 17 months of his presidency, he avoided it, preferring the busy White House. But as his job became more demanding, his opinion shifted. By 1994, Clinton saw Camp David as a valuable escape, a quiet place to relax away from the constant attention of the media. Unlike George Bush, who liked to host big parties, Clinton preferred smaller, more private gatherings. He invited only a few close people, with no aides, reporters, or extra guests. This allowed him to have open conversations without worrying about public criticism. These retreats were not random. One key time Clinton used Camp David was during the Monica Lewinsky scandal. As the situation worsened, he went there to escape the heavy media coverage. However, it was unclear whether these weekends were just for rest or also for strategic planning. Clinton's change in attitude toward Camp David came after 1994. What caused this shift? It could have been the relaxing swimming pool, the quiet fish pond, or perhaps the influence of his wife, Hillary, who often planned these trips. She played an important role in creating a space where Clinton could unwind from the pressures of his job. There were also notable guests, including politicians, business leaders, and celebrities. These gatherings sparked curiosity about what was discussed behind closed doors, leading to speculation about secret deals and conversations. While these retreats helped Clinton recharge and strategize, they also raised concerns about transparency and the use of public funds. Now we turn from Nixon to Bush, exploring another presidential hideaway. Behind the gates of presidential retreats, even though Camp David offered a break, not everything that happened there stayed private. As stories of Clinton's weekends faded, attention shifted to another president's retreat. George W. Bush had his own private hideaway at Prairie Chapel Ranch in Crawford, Texas. Covering 1,600 acres, it became the setting for some of the most exclusive and private events of his presidency, far away from the busy political scene of Washington. The Crawford Ranch was a place where President Bush could take a break from the nonstop pressure of the White House. It was a quiet, private spot where he could invite foreign leaders, close friends, and advisors for more personal conversations. One important meeting happened here in April 2002 with Crown Prince Abdullah of Saudi Arabia. The ranch, which Bush loved, far from the media, was the perfect setting for their long talks about the war on terror. But was this just a regular diplomatic meeting? Or was it a way to build a personal bond that could shape future U.S.-Saudi relations? Bush liked to mix personal time with official business. He would take visitors around the ranch in his truck, proudly pointing out his favorite places and showing off the local wildlife. During the visit with the Crown Prince, they likely talked informally, maybe even about something simple like wild turkeys. It helped break the ice and made the conversation feel more relaxed. But this wasn't just a place for casual chats. The ranch also hosted serious talks about important issues like peace in the Middle East and fighting terrorism. These talks weren't just about policy, they were about building mutual understanding. And sometimes they led to heated debates that impacted global relationships. The public didn't know much about these meetings because Bush kept them very private. This secrecy led to a lot of curiosity. What agreements were made in the quiet corners of Texas? People couldn't help but wonder what high-stakes conversations were happening behind closed doors. For Bush, Crawford Ranch wasn't just a getaway, it was a place where he could blend his personal life with his responsibilities as president. Whether he was working on the land, riding his bike, or talking with world leaders, he found a way to balance relaxation with serious political work. This mix of informal setting and important discussions was part of how Bush led, adding a personal touch to his presidency. But even with all the lighthearted moments, the serious decisions made here shaped international policies. The ranch became more than just a backdrop. It was a stage for important diplomatic moves. As Bush balanced personal life and political responsibilities at Crawford Ranch, do you think blending informal settings with critical decisions benefits or hinders leadership? Let us know in the comments, like, and subscribe for more.